Welcome back to our special In Focus, the Hae Min Lee files.
Yeah, we left off as lawyers on both sides prepared for a hearing to erase Adnan Syed's conviction in Hae Min Lee's murder.
WMAR 2 News' Ashley McDowell was there the night of the vacator hearing in September 2022.
A Baltimore City Circuit judge has approved Baltimore City prosecutors' motion to vacate the murder conviction of Adnan Syed.
Adnan has been in prison since he was a 17-year-old child, 23 years. As you can imagine, today is both joyful and incredibly overwhelming.
Prosecutors say cell phone data used in Syed's original trial was unreliable, and they have uncovered undisclosed material that points to two other suspects. City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby says it is the basis to the violation deemed by the judge.
Our reinvestigation revealed that the original prosecutors and the subsequent prosecutors in the Attorney General's office failed to disclose relevant information about alternative suspects, one of whom threatened to kill the victim and had motive to kill the victim, and both of whom had a pattern of violence against women.
This has been a year-long investigation for the prosecutors. The family for Lee said they felt the state had failed them because they trusted them to convict the correct person, and they thought Syed was the right person.
They're disappointed with the process more than the result. They were not given the information as to why the state filed this motion after 20 years of standing by this conviction. So the family just wanted information. They wanted to know why this motion was being filed.
Syed was released under home detention, but a new trial date has not been set. Prosecutors are saying they are not declaring that Syed is innocent, just that he deserves a fair trial. Prosecutors have 30 days to set that new trial date or dismiss the case. In downtown Baltimore, Ashley McDowell, WMAR 2 News.
Now, that sense of relief for Syed didn't last long. Just a few months later, his conviction was reinstated, and that's where it remains today.
So his future is now once again in the hands of a court. We explain why that happened and where the case stands now.
We've all had that gnawing feeling that something is just too good to be true. Adnan Syed knows it well. After spending more than a year as a free man, the threat of returning to prison still lingers.
And we're going to respect whatever decision that court makes. If that court makes a decision that I have to return to prison, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be in prison.
One of Syed's supporters, a D.C. attorney and co-host of a podcast that took a deep dive into his case, Susan Simpson, didn't let herself get too excited when his conviction was tossed out last year.
There's always been so many false starts that I don't think I've really got my hopes up till we were at the court that day. And as it turns out, that wasn't the end of the story either.
Nope, it was the beginning of a debate over highly technical legal terms and what rights victims have in court. At the heart of this is whether the rights of young Lee, that's the brother of Hae Min Lee, were violated. Here's Lee's attorney, David Sanford.
And so they had closure, or they thought they had closure for 20 years. Suddenly, with one day's notice, they realized maybe they don't have closure.
So Lee lives in California, and he was only told about the Monday hearing, the hearing that would decide whether the man he believed murdered his sister would walk free, on the Friday before. So he attended via Zoom. Sanford, his attorney, argues that violated his dignity as a victim. Maryland state law guarantees his right to be treated with dignity and his right to be given reasonable notice of the hearing. Now, what's considered reasonable is subjective, but
We know what's unreasonable. And if you give someone who lives in California one business day's notice to appear at a hearing on the East Coast, that on its face is unreasonable.
So he filed an appeal. But before the court had a chance to even make a decision on that appeal, the charges against Syed were dropped. Now here's where things get messy. We called in Baltimore attorney Stephen Klepper to help us explain the issues at play here.
First issue is mootness, which is a highly technical legal concept that is often misunderstood even by lawyers.
That's a fancy way of saying something's irrelevant. Syed's legal team says since the charges were dropped, that was the end of the case, and Lee's appeal was rendered moot. But remember, the charges were dropped before a judge ever made a decision about Lee's appeal, so Sanford says they were never given a fighting chance. But on the other hand, if Lee were able to attend in person, would that have changed the outcome of the hearing? If not, it's chalked up to, here comes another legal term, something called harmless error.
And it doesn't mean that it's harmless to how Mr. Lee justifiably feels, but harmlessness means, did it affect how the judge ruled.
But Lee's attorneys aren't only arguing that he should have been able to attend in person. Sanford goes a step further to say Lee should also be able to participate more meaningfully in a hearing like this.
So if you're allowed as a victim to participate meaningfully in a sentence, you should be allowed to participate in the vacating of a sentence. So this is an interpretation of the statute that we've offered the court.
Lee was given the chance to make a victim impact statement, which Klepper and Simpson say the court didn't have to allow him to do.
So to then say, okay, he had far more involvement than the law requires, and yet that's still not enough?
What he's saying is that there needed to be a chance to call witnesses, to cross-examine them. And the appellate court disagreed on that. They said you don't even have a right to give a statement. You do not have a right to call witnesses.
So this is the issue brought before the Maryland Supreme Court. Syed's conviction was reinstated back in March by the appellate court until all of this is settled. He was able to remain free, but a dark cloud has remained over his family, especially his mom.
It's something that keeps her up at night. Every single night people call her and they tell her they're so happy that I'm home, but she knows in her heart that at any moment I could be taken away again.
Highest court hears the arguments in this case on Thursday, and its decision could have lasting effects across the state.
So what the ruling means for the future of victims' rights and court hearings in Maryland when we come back.